The actual mixing of this song. I'm going to try and quickly go over some things and not draw this out too long, hopefully. I want to get to the vocals because that's something that we really haven't talked about. EQ, starting with the drums. I always start with drums. Makes sense to me to start with drums. On this kick drum, I did cut a little bit of low end because of that noise. I did this other technique, so let's listen to it. It's very bright, so I wanted to lighten that up a little bit. Also, I wanted to find that noise as much as I could. So one technique for doing that is I essentially narrowed the Q on the band that I wanted to explore. I raised it up quite a bit. To find the most egregious set of frequencies, and cut it. Now, it doesn't get rid of it, but it does help to attenuate it a little bit. As I'm sitting here, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to put in the transient master and see if cutting the sustain will get rid of some of that noise on the tail. And it does. Okay. This kick drum is more of a live, real acoustic sounding kick drum. I increased the attack and I shortened the sustain. And I raised, let's say 80 by about 3 dB. I also raised about, I believe that's about a 2.5, because I wanted to, can I get rid of that vocal? Why is it there? The bottom of the sea. Oh, I know why. Because this send is in pre. I wanted to accentuate, I wanted more bass out of the kick drum. I wanted more beater out of the kick drum and not rely on this thinner one for everything. On to the snare drum, also transient master. Okay, so minus the reverb. It's a very long, kind of flabby sounding snare drum to me. So by putting in the transient master, increasing the attack, lowering the sustain, it helps to tighten it up. And then on the EQ side, cutting some low end, cutting a fair amount of mid-range in the 650 range, raising 2.5 for some brightness, and a little bit above that. That should be around 5. Oh, that's 8. A lot of this stuff is called air, kind of just to open it up a little bit. All right, so it's a bit brighter. Second snare drum. This one already is pretty tight. So I think everything that I'm doing is really just accentuating that tightness. I did drop a fair amount here at 2.5 because I want the other snare drum to be more up front. So I'm actually boosting here at around 250, 280. Okay, so this one is kind of making up for some of the hollowness of the more acoustic sounding snare drum. All right, what else? Hi-hat. I actually played with the transient master on the hi-hat. I increased the attack. I wanted more of the actual hit, and I lowered the sustain quite a bit because there's also noise on this sample. On the EQ side, I found it pretty harsh, so I dipped quite a bit here at about 5,000. And there was like this weird kind of round sound as it hit. I heard it at around 400, 380, something like that. All right, so that's the EQ on the drums. What else did I do on the drums? I put reverb on the snare drums and a little bit on that first kick. Thinking that through, why didn't I put it on this more acoustic kit? This one has more bass on it, and I really just wanted to get reverb on the higher end frequencies of the kick. We could have achieved that other ways, but that's what I did. I bussed the kicks and the snares on bus 7 and 8 to a stereo aux input. So this is parallel both. So this is a crush. I'm doing two things here. Pretty heavy compression, like really heavy. Back off that a little bit. Moderate attack. I want the transients to come through. Maybe I'll squash that a little bit more. And the other thing, perhaps even more important or interesting maybe, is I also put the SansAmp preamp modeler, which is under harmonic. So this is like a guitar amp simulator, just a preamp, and I wanted a little bit of distortion. So how can we hear that? Let's see. Put these into pre. So that's what this sounds like. Just to kind of dirty up the drum kit a little bit. All right, so noticing a lot of the EQ that we did was subtractive. There was some additive. This is additive in some respects. So we are going to start seeing our overall levels change. I'm going to stop paying attention to that until a little later and I do more. Bass. On the electric bass sound, I inserted Guitar Rig 5. 6 is just the player, so there's not a lot you can do with it. Guitar Rig 5. I put in from components and amplifiers. I chose Bass Pro. I actually cut back on the mid-range a little bit. And it sounds like this. Why do I keep hearing that? That's not what I want. Oh, because I'm... These are all in pre still. Why do I hear that? Oh, we don't hear it now. Back to Guitar Rig. Oh yeah, without it. Let's get to where the bass plays. It brings up a lot more low end and just a general tone of an amp. EQ wise, I wanted to cut some of that kind of low mid. So I'm at around 150 there. Just because the guitar is going to be there a bit more. And the bass synth, the synth bass, I essentially inverted and added more low end in the synth. I kind of wanted more stringiness in the bass, in the live bass, so-called live bass, which I found up here. And I'm kind of playing games with letting the synth take over some space. I also put a compressor on the routing folder of the bass and routed one of the kicks. Don't need both of them. They're playing the same part in pre, so that as I change volumes here, what's going to this synth doesn't change.
Why should I stay?
And again, the point there, the goal is to let a little bit more of the kick come through and hear the kick in the mix. All right, so drums, bass, keys and guitar, kept it pretty simple for now. I did boost a lot, looks like, of about 900 in the keyboard.
Why?
Wanted a little bit more brightness out of it, but not in the tinniness area. In the guitar, cut some low end with a filter and am boosting about 2.9. You can hear the brightness in that. Just opening both up a little bit. Now, I'm not, at least at the moment, thinking about boosting much of the high end in the keyboard, because I think that helps to differentiate these two instruments that are playing together the entire time. That this one's kind of in the upper mids and the highs, and this one is kind of boosted in the low mids.
Why should I?
All right, vocals. Did a decent amount there. On the lead vocal, cut low end. Now, one thing with the high pass filters is you can change the slope from, 6 to 12 to 24, which is kind of just the steepness of it. I don't think you need a tremendously sharp slope on a vocal where we're just trying to clean up kind of this stuff that may not even be there.
Why should I stay?
Let's solo that for a minute.
Why should I stay?
Turn off this other stuff.
Why should I stay?
All right, so in this range here, which is kind of the mid-range, a certain boxiness, a certain nasally.
Why should I?
So I'm really not doing too much to brighten. I am, but I would say almost as much comes from dipping this mid-range that kind of masks the upper mids and highs. And then I'm just boosting, 7,000 and a little bit at 3 to get a little bit more cut to come through. This caused a little bit of a problem with the S's.
Why should I stay?
So there's a lot of S there. So I also put a compressor.
Why should I stay?
Just to keep these long notes at the same or a closer, more consistent volume. That pretty moderate on the attack, pretty quick release, or quicker, not very fast. For the most part, I'm keeping these at 4:1 ratio. And I put the de-esser in part because I wanted to show you what it does. So if you listen,
Why should I?
and you click here on listen,
Why should I?
it's bypassed. Dumb. What this does is it kind of allows you to sweep through where you hear the offending S's. and then you lower the range, which is essentially a threshold, and it literally will only push down in this frequency area.
Why should I? Why should I?
You can hear the shh.
Why should I? Why should I stay?
Okay, and I would say that I'm a little overdoing it on that at this point.
Why should I stay?
All right, so I got EQ, compression, and de-essing on the vocal. I did a little bit of funky thing here, I think, by bussing this over to a mono aux track and putting the SansAmp on there as well to give a little bit of saturation or distortion to the vocal. Let's see if we can hear that. I'll put this into pre and mute this and solo this.
Why should I stay?
It's pretty warm at this point. I might even...
Why should I stay? Why should I? Why should I stay?
So this is parallel saturation. Same concept as parallel compression. May even do parallel compression on a vocal. It works really well. But in this case, I just wanted to fly in a little bit of distortion underneath.
Why should I?
So this remains the lead vocal. This one kind of gives a little bit of body, fills it out a little bit, warms it up. Backups. So I didn't do anything to the backups individually, just to kind of speed through it a little bit. What I might consider doing is EQing the left and right sides slightly differently so that they could differentiate and I can hear them individually. But for the sake of kind of getting through this quickly, I put EQ on the group on the routing folder as a whole.
What
So where are my backups?
if they do the end of the earth? Yeah.
Pretty dramatic low cut. I didn't want much low end coming from those backups because the lead is kind of covering a lot of that. Brightened it up a bit, cut that same kind of muddy, boxy 600 range, compressed it a good amount. Again, moderate, mid attack, a bit quicker on the release. Although really don't need it because those are very long sustained notes. So holding on to the compression doesn't really hurt. And this time around, I sent it over to a stereo aux track in parallel. And this time I chose to put chorus on it. And choral is Native Instruments chorus. They call it a synth. It's interesting. Let's see, that's 5/6. I'll pre that. Is it playing? Okay, maybe not.
Yeah.
Why don't I hear that? I wanted to hear that.
To the end.
Okay, tricked it. So now we're just hearing the chorus. So you can see this rate, it would wobble much more. I don't really like it. Feedback I didn't like. I did put in a fair amount here, the amount. Okay, so it kind of softens, it widens. I do think I increased the width, just to kind of do something weird with the backups.
To the end of the earth, and I follow.
Just to kind of fill it out a little bit. That's everything that I did so far in, I did put a reverb, and so far I have, as I mentioned, snare drum primarily, a little bit on the kick, nothing on the bass if I get there. Still haven't put anything on the keys. I did put some on the vocals. What else is going on here? Yeah, choral, yeah, that's pretty much everything I've done so far.